All right, let's get right into it. We're going on a journey through the absolutely epic 2,000-year story of London. And what you'll see is that this is a city defined not by any one single moment, but by its constant, relentless, and often brutal transformation.
I mean, just think about the scale of that change for a second. 2,000 years ago, the spot we now call London was nothing more than an uninhabited swamp, strategically useless. Today, it's a massive global metropolis where you can hear over 300 different languages spoken on the streets any given day. So the big question is, how on earth did that happen? How does a muddy swamp become literally the world in one city? Well, the answer is this incredible story of invasion, disaster, fire, plague, a whole series of near-total collapses, each one followed by a remarkable reinvention. So let's wind the clock all the way back to the beginning. It all starts with an invading army looking for a place to build a bridge. When the Romans showed up in 43 AD, they needed a good spot for a supply base. And they found the perfect one, the lowest point on the River Thames where they could get a bridge across. They called it Londinium, and boom, almost overnight, it became this bustling hub. You had merchants from Gaul, soldiers from Syria, traders from North Africa. It was an instant magnet for people. But the city's first life cycle was incredibly fast and violent. Just 17 years after it was founded, the whole place was burned to the ground by Queen Boudicca's Celtic army. The destruction in 60 AD was so complete that, archaeologists today can still find this thick red layer of ash from that fire right underneath modern London. But the Romans rebuilt it, bigger and stronger, and they put up a massive defensive wall, parts of which are actually still standing today.
And then around 410 AD, the Roman Empire started to crumble. The Emperor Honorius basically sent a message to the people in Britain that said, "You're on your own." The armies left, the trade routes that brought everything from wine to olive oil just vanished. And Londinium, this once thriving city, just withered away. A population of 50,000 people shrank to just a few hundred squatters living among the ruins.
So for the next few hundred years, the old Roman city was basically a ghost town. London's second act would be shaped by a whole new set of arrivals, the Saxons, the Vikings, and a truly catastrophic plague. The Saxons at first actually stayed away from the old Roman walls. They built a new trading town called Londonwick about a mile to the west. The problem was this new town was a complete sitting duck for Viking raiders who sacked it again and again. So in 886, King Alfred the Great had this genius idea: move everyone back inside the old, strong Roman walls. The city was reborn as Londonburg, the London Fortress. All right, let's jump forward to 1066. This is a big one. King Edward the Confessor dies without an heir. William, the Duke of Normandy, says the throne is his. He invades, wins the Battle of Hastings, and gets himself crowned king on Christmas Day. Suddenly, the Normans are in charge. And to keep the rowdy Londoners in line, William builds the fortress that becomes the Tower of London, a giant stone fist to remind everyone who was now boss. The medieval city just keeps growing, getting more cramped and chaotic, until 1348, when ships arrive carrying the Black Death. Look at this chart. In just 2 years, the plague wiped out 45% of the city's population. Think about that. Nearly 1 out of every 2 people, gone. It was just a staggering catastrophe. And yet somehow, London recovered again. But in the 1660s, it faced 2 more disasters that would, weirdly enough, pave the way for the city we recognize today. So by the 17th century, you have to picture London as a giant tinderbox, just waiting for a spark. Almost every building was made of wood, with roofs made of straw. The streets were super narrow, with the upper floors of houses practically touching. You've got open fires in every single home for heat and cooking, and absolutely no official fire department. Disaster was pretty much inevitable. Then, the city gets hit with this devastating 1-2 punch. First, in 1665, another wave of plague kills about 100,000 people, a quarter of the entire population. Then, literally the very next year, a fire starts in a small bakery on Pudding Lane, and it doesn't stop for 4 days, leaving another 100,000 people homeless. 85%. Let that sink in for a moment. That's how much of the old medieval city inside the walls was just gone. Over 13,000 houses, 87 churches, all of it turned to ash. But here's the thing about London. Out of this total devastation came this incredible opportunity. The rebuilding effort wasn't just about putting things back. It was a total rethink. New laws required buildings to be made of brick and stone, not timber. This made the city safer, sure, but it also projected this image of permanence and stability. And it gave the architect Christopher Wren a blank canvas to build his masterpiece, the new St. Paul's Cathedral, with that iconic dome becoming a symbol of a resilient modern city. So, reborn from the ashes, London was ready for its most powerful phase yet, as the crowded, chaotic, and unbelievably wealthy heart of a global empire. The Industrial Revolution changed everything. The growth was just off the charts. In 1801, London had about 1 million people. By 1901, just 100 years later, that number had exploded to 6.5 million. It was, by far, the largest and most powerful city on the planet. But this massive city was also massively unequal. It really was a tale of two cities. In the West End, in places like Mayfair, the wealthy lived in these grand houses with unbelievable comfort. But in the East End, millions were crammed into filthy, unsanitary slums, yet constant cholera outbreaks, high crime. It was a place of real desperation, standing in stark contrast to the immense wealth of the empire. The 20th century arrives, bringing an end to the empire and a new kind of war that would come directly to London's streets, sparking the city's most recent, and maybe its most dramatic, rebirth. During World War II, the front line wasn't in some distant field. It was right over London. Between 1940 and 1941, German bombers hit the city almost every single night in what became known as the Blitz. The destruction was immense. By the time the war was over 1 million buildings in London had been damaged or destroyed. And once again, out of the rubble, London rebuilt. But this rebirth was profoundly different. As the physical city was being reconstructed, the British Empire was ending. Facing huge labor shortages, Britain invited citizens from its former colonies to come and help. This started with the Windrush generation from the Caribbean in 1948 and was followed by people from India, Pakistan, Africa, and beyond. They didn't just rebuild the city's buildings, they fundamentally remade its social fabric, transforming London into the vibrant, multicultural place we know today. And that's really the central thread of this whole 2,000-year story, isn't it? Through Roman withdrawal, Viking raids, the Black Death, the Great Fire, the Blitz, London was never truly defeated. Each and every time, it rebuilt, it adapted, and it kept pulling in new people with new ideas from all over the world. That's what makes London, well, London. It's a city that's always in motion, defined by this constant cycle of destruction and creation, which leaves us with one final thought to ponder. After 2,000 years of non-stop change, what on earth will London's next rebirth look like?